Last month's open fight night I thought was problematic because TNA tried to have everyone in the Bound for Glory series wrestle in a match, and there's just too many of them to be able to do that effectively. And when you add that to the gut check, storylines like the Claire Lynch thing, and wrestling angles like Aries Rude and the Aces and Eights, etc., and they're forced to really cram everything in, and they aren't left with enough time to really spotlight anything the right way. Thankfully, it seems like TNA learned from their mistake this month, and they did some things to kind of break up the formula so they could work around this problem. And I was glad to see them do this, because even though I personally didn't really care for this episode, I did think it was necessary. Trying to do it like they did last month wouldn't have worked. There's just not enough time available to them, so they took some shortcuts to change things up a little, and the fact that they did get a noticeable boost in viewership shows that they were on the right track. You know, they still had all the same things happen, but they had the Aces and Eights lay out Kurt Angle, meaning that Angle and Storm didn't happen. That saved a couple minutes. They attacked the gut check contestant, so that was postponed. You know, they really built the show around this angle and used it to stop some segments from happening, which gave the writers more time to work with. And this was effective in pushing this Aces and Eights thing into second gear. Unfortunately, it also means that we missed out on some cool stuff. But I assume we'll see Storm versus Angle at some point, and apparently the gut check match will happen on the next show, so no harm, no foul. By the way, am I the only one who finds it really funny that this Sam Shaw guy will be back a week after the Aces and Eights laid him out, but Hogan needed surgery after they attacked him, and both Hogan and Sting are now out indefinitely? That just made me laugh. Anyway, they had all these Bound for Glory series matches. Not a whole lot worth mentioning here. Some of them were better than others. AJ Anderson was pretty decent. Daniels Van Dam was good for the time it had, and for the fact that Daniels actually went over this time. Yes! Magnus Bully Ray was my favorite of the bunch, even though Magnus lost. So I guess that superior strategy thing is just gone now for some reason, which is kind of a shame. No! The rest of them were not as good. Pope Samoa Joe I thought was pretty sloppy, and Joe apparently dislocated his jaw in that match. I'm sure that didn't help. And Storm Angle ended up not happening, and then there was the Jeff Hardy match. He comes out to challenge somebody, but we never find out who, because he's interrupted by Robbie E and Rob Terry.
Nobody cares about you guys.
Robbie fucking E. The lazy-ass, no-talent waste of money that has everyone who watches this show wondering why the hell he's even in this tournament in the first place, unless it's to constantly lose to every other guy like the jobber he is and give them easy points.
Yet again, I am standing before another ignoramus.
That's why I thought he was in there. Makes a hell of a lot more sense than him going over talents that are actually worth something. But then this happens. So this loser challenges Jeff Hardy because he thinks the other participants in the Bound for Glory series are ducking him, even though he's like 0-7. And they have a match right out of the Russo playbook where there's so much outside interference from Rob Terry that it just makes the referee look like a blind idiot for not seeing it. And in fact, at one point, he did see it and still did nothing about it.
This whole show is ridiculous!
And then Robbie ends up winning the match by countout.
Oh my God, he's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke!
You know, I don't like Jeff Hardy. I've never been a fan of his. But he is one of the biggest stars and biggest money makers this company has. To have him lose to a worthless sack of crap like Robbie E under any circumstances... What the hell are you thinking?
You people are fools!
TNA, that doesn't do anything for anyone. It sure as hell doesn't elevate Robbie because no one takes him seriously anyway. All it does is drag Hardy down to his level because Jeff couldn't beat a jobber that he realistically should have steamrolled despite the interference. Kick to the gut, twist of fate, boom, done. That's how it should have gone anyway, just like when Robbie fought Kurt Angle. Instead, all you accomplished here was diminishing one of your bigger meal tickets.
I don't know what my future holds, but I know one thing.
Given that it was only a countout loss and the lengths they went to protect Hardy here, I'm pretty sure this was more about denying Hardy 7 points than anything else. I mean, they've been trying to level the playing field somewhat in terms of points, so multiple people can be in the running for the final 4 spots and you don't have a select few way out in front. That makes things less predictable, especially now that Aries is the champion. And in order for that to happen, some people gotta lose matches. But for Jeff Hardy to lose a match to Robbie E is just baffling to me. And the match itself was just further proof of why this jackass is so worthless. He has a match with Jeff Hardy, one of the biggest stars in the company, who a few years ago was arguably the biggest star in wrestling, period. The match is less than 3 minutes long, and he still can't even bust his ass for the brief moments when he was on the offense. Even with those multiple respites he got when Hardy was being attacked by Rob Terry, he still had to break out the rest hold of doom? Is his cardio really that bad that he can't go 3 goddamn minutes without a break? Fuck this whole segment.
You can take this microphone and shove it up your ass.
Moving on, Claire Lynch came out to confront AJ after his match with Anderson. They kind of combined these two segments, which was smart. It saved a little more time. And it's kind of funny how when she first showed up, she was saying that AJ was a paragon of virtue, and now she's basically calling him a deadbeat and getting more and more heelish every week. And concurrently, this angle is getting more and more preposterous every week. It does make me laugh, I'll give it that, but I don't think it's supposed to make me laugh. And now Claire Lynch has photos of her and AJ in bed together. But did you see how in every photo she was posing for the camera while AJ was obviously unconscious? Yeah, you can see where this is headed. I think the only real question now is what date rape drug the heels used to knock AJ out. And maybe the pregnancy will turn out to be fake, or Daniels is the father, but they're going to falsify the DNA test results or something. And yeah, I guess this is better than AJ being an adulterer, but still, it's so ridiculous. But as bad as it is, I guess I can't really blame TNA for doing it. As I understand it, the Claire Lynch storyline has had a somewhat positive effect on the ratings in these segments, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I was talking to Chess Army about this during this podcast we did, and he said he was watching the show with a casual fan who doesn't normally watch wrestling, and the only time this person was really interested in what was going on was the Claire Lynch segment. So I guess it's just one of these things where the IWC thinks it's dumb, but casual fans get a kick out of it. So I'm sure it's going to continue for a while longer. I know a lot of us don't like it, but my advice, don't take it seriously. Just try to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the whole thing and leave it at that. Oh boy, Eric Young and ODB are back. Yay! Here's some news. TNA signed Chavo Guerrero, and he's debuting next week. The main event was the Austin Aries-Bobby Roode rematch, and unfortunately we didn't get much time with either of them until then. They're having another great match until the Aces and Eights show up, again, and lay them both out. So that one's postponed, presumably until Hardcore Justice. And that's what we went out on. And I do think it was a good idea to not give away the ending of this match, but it does kind of seem like Austin Aries' world title reign is already taking a backseat to the Aces and Eights storyline after just 2 weeks. I'm hoping that'll change now that they've targeted him, but so far it feels like he hasn't been spotlighted like the world champion should be, and that concerns me. How you felt about this episode probably depends on how you feel about the Aces and Eights angle. Personally, I like it, but to do all this in 1 week felt like overkill. I think a little goes a long way with an angle like this, but when you expand the scope of it this much, this fast, now it's starting to come off like another NWO clone. Not for nothing, though. There was a purpose to these attacks, at least. Number 1, to establish that no one is safe from this group, not faces or heels. And number 2, to get over that the show is kind of falling into chaos without a general manager. So how's this for an idea? If this show needs an interim GM until Hogan and or Sting comes back, then right here, right now, I nominate Joseph Park. Make it happen, Bruce Pritchard. Joseph Park for interim Impact Wrestling General Manager for the fucking win.
Yes! 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 Yes!
What I also thought was interesting was that the announcers started speculating whether there might be a connection between all these seemingly random attacks. And that's actually a really good question. If there were some kind of connection, maybe we could deduce who's behind all this. You know what? Screw it. I think we can figure this out. Let's put on our thinking caps for a minute and see if we can connect the dots here. Now let's think. Who do we know who hates Hogan, Sting, Kurt Angle, and feels threatened by rising young stars and burgeoning new talent? Well, shit, I don't know. I'm stumped. Maybe there is no connection. But, just in case those aces and eights decide to come after me, I'm gonna arm myself with one of these.
Destination? Horror.
I'm gonna echo the Schleg Daddy on this one. Don't do it, TNA. Don't do it. I think most people know this already, but TNA is coming up on the end of their run of live TV. If you want Impact Wrestling to stay a live show, you need to tweet to Dixie Carter, Impact Wrestling Spike TV, hashtag #KeepImpactLive. Now, before this happened, I really didn't see going live as being a huge deal, but I have to admit, the shows have had a different energy about them, and the crowds have been a lot better too. And another thing, I may get some crap for saying this, and I swear this is not me being a mark, but based on these shows, I honestly think TNA is better at doing live TV than WWE is. Hear me out for a second, okay? Just hear me out. Impact feels like a live show, meaning that they produce it intentionally to come off that way. When something unexpected happens, it catches everyone off guard, from the wrestlers all the way down to the production crew. Like when Joey Ryan showed up during Taylor Hendricks' gut check. What happened? The whole segment stopped for a minute while him and Taz yelled at each other, and JB's like, hey, live TV, what can you do? Or like on this show when James Storm challenged Kurt Angle, but Angle didn't come out. Storm had to tell the camera guy to go find Kurt Angle. And what happened? The camera guy then had to physically go backstage and find Kurt Angle. He wasn't where he was supposed to be, so no one knew where he was. Why? Because it's live TV. If something unexpected happens, no matter how good the production crew is, there's always going to be a moment of confusion where everyone's thinking, we didn't plan for this, what the hell do we do? This is something that you just never get with Raw. The way they produce that show actually works against them in this capacity. And even though it is a live show, everything is so overly scripted and overly produced and micromanaged that it just doesn't feel like it's live. Like on that episode where Vince came back and he runs into Cameron and Naomi backstage, and suddenly they're all dancing and getting funky, and just like that, there's music playing and the lighting changes and the camera's going all woo!
I will not participate in this charade this evening.
Are you kidding me? That would never happen on a live show. They planned this shit. There's a lot of pre-production stuff that went into that segment, and they want us to think that somehow, some way, they just knew that people would start randomly dancing backstage and set up the lights and the music and the camera in that specific area just in case?
Oh, what a bunch of bull.
You see what I mean? Impact Wrestling feels like a real live show. And because of the way it's produced, Raw, despite being live for many years, feels more like a taped show. So that's it for Impact. Sorry this video was so late. I had to work most of the weekend, and this was the earliest I could do it. And I was going to do a review of The Dark Knight Rises, but I didn't have time, and most people have seen it by now anyway, so I kind of missed the boat on that one. If you want my brief thoughts, I liked it. I thought it was very well made, but it's definitely the most flawed of the Nolan trilogy. And as good as Nolan is, and he is an amazing filmmaker, this was the first movie that made me feel like he didn't really understand the Batman character or his universe. Not that it was a bad movie or anything, but some of the creative decisions they made I just did not agree with. It'll probably play better to the casual moviegoers, but I think it may end up rubbing some comic fans the wrong way. And that'll be it for me. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, I'm gonna take a look around and maybe lock my doors and windows. Later.